Let's rely on Fox's Tanya Powers to get us up to speed on where we are in this story. Have a listen.
A major CDC shakeup is underway. Lawyers for Susan Manores, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, are pushing back on her ousting after the Department of Health and Human Services posted a statement saying she is, quote, no longer in her position. Wednesday's announcement was followed up by a statement from a White House spokesperson saying she was indeed terminated, citing her lack of alignment with the president's agenda of making America healthy again. Attorneys for Manores say she is being targeted, and as a person of integrity and devoted to science, she will not resign. Dr. Manores was recently sworn in as director of the CDC after being confirmed by the Senate just 4 weeks ago. During her confirmation hearing, she was clear about her support for vaccines.
I think vaccines save lives. I think that we need to continue to support the promotion of utilization of vaccines.
Her lawyers argue because she was appointed by President Donald Trump to the post, he had to personally dismiss her. This comes as HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. narrowed the scope of who will be approved to get COVID vaccines this fall and winter, and says change within the CDC is necessary.
The agency is in trouble, and we need to fix it. We need strong leadership that will go in there and that will be able to execute on President Trump's broad ambitions to restore this agency to gold standard science.
The announcement of Manores' dismissal has prompted a wave of resignations within the agency, including 4 senior officials. In New York, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Tanya, thanks so much. This was a key focal point today at the White House press briefing. Reporters were trying to ask White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on the White House's rationale for firing Manores here. This is how Caroline Leavitt responded to one of those questions. Let's listen.
Caroline, thank you so much. First, on the firing of the CDC director, who will replace her? And then also, overnight, the White House said that she did not align with the president's agenda. Dr. Manores' attorneys say that she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. What specifically did she do wrong?
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't. So the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement.
All right, so that's the word from Caroline Leavitt and the White House, their reasoning for why Manores was no longer fit for the role. So in the meantime, an acting director has been named here. Take a look at this. Josh Kraushaar has it there. He's with the Jewish Insider. He has White House taps top RFK Jr. deputy as the acting CDC director. His name is Jim O'Neill. You see him in the photo there. So he will serve as acting director of the CDC. In the meantime, remember, Manores is still fighting to keep her job. She's hired some top defense attorneys, including Mark Zaid and Abby Lowell. But in the meantime, we want to talk about what this means for the CDC, what this means for the Trump White House, and what the disagreements were between Manores and RFK Jr. So in the meantime, let's bring into the conversation right now reporter Margaret Manto with NOTUS. She joins me. She covers all of this. Margaret, good to see you here. I know you've had a busy 24 hours. So let's get right to it. I want to ask this. Who's in charge of the CDC right now?
That is a really great question. I don't think it's 100% clear at this moment in time. Like you said, the Trump administration has named or is about to name who it would like to be the acting director of the CDC. That's Jim O'Neill. But at this moment, Susan Manores is still pushing back on her firing. So it's hard to say exactly who's running the show.
All right, who's Jim O'Neill? He's being described as a top advisor to RFK Jr. What does that mean? Was he brought in by RFK at the beginning of the administration, or has he been at the CDC before?
So Jim O'Neill, yes, he was previously in HHS. He was an advisor during the last Bush administration. He is a biotech and tech investor. He's a close advisor of Secretary Kennedy's. And so it seems like putting him at the helm of the CDC is going to put a Kennedy ally at the forefront.
All right, let's get to the crux of the issue, why Manores was ousted. So it seemed like from the reporting, HHS Secretary Kennedy demanded she resign earlier this week. She said no. Then she called up some of these senators to back her. And then RFK found out about that, and he was livid about that. She still wouldn't go. And then the White House essentially told her, you know, if you don't resign, we're going to fire you. Is that how it all went down?
Yeah, that's what's been reported, is that Kennedy was really pushing for Manores to back his decisions when it comes to the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. They make the decisions for the vaccine schedule, so which vaccines are recommended for children and adults. And what's been reported is that Manores refused to sign off on some of the changes that Kennedy has been pushing for when it comes to the personnel on that committee and the recommendations that will come out of it at their next meeting. So, yeah, it seems like this was really all about a disagreement between Kennedy and Manores on vaccines for the most part.
Okay, so I know hindsight is 2020, Margaret, but you know, if you're the Trump administration and you need a CDC director, why nominate Manores in the first place if you could maybe have foreseen some of these disagreements she was going to have with RFK about vaccine policy and vaccine safety? Specifically, I have to remind the viewers, I reminded them last night, this was the Trump administration, Trump transition really's second choice. Their first choice, Dr. David Weldon, he didn't have the votes in the Senate. He never made it to a confirmation process. So this was their second choice here. How didn't they see all of this coming, the Trump administration?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think during his confirmation process, Secretary Kennedy was really careful to toe the line when it came to vaccines and to some other issues that he's been pretty outspoken about in the past. And I think the Trump administration probably saw in Manores, you know, someone who could have a steady hand on the ship and would, you know, keep things at the CDC running smoothly. It's an extremely important agency. It's basically the epicenter for all of public health in the country. And yeah, like you said, their first choice, Dave Weldon, didn't make it to his confirmation hearings. He was a pretty outspoken anti-vaccine advocate back in the day. So yeah, I think Manores was meant to be a steadier figure, and I think Kennedy has really come out of his shell when it comes to speaking out against vaccines since getting confirmed, and we're seeing the kind of logical conclusion of that here.
Obviously, and maybe our viewers forgot because the news moves so fast. Mere weeks ago, we were covering this, shooting incident outside CDC headquarters. A police officer was shot and killed. Hundreds of rounds were shot into the CDC headquarters, many bullet holes in the glass and the like here. Manores was the director at the time. She's only been director for 28 days. She's now out of that position here. Did her response to that factor into this decision, or no? Was it purely about vaccine disagreements, do you think?
This is another really good question. So Manores' response to that shooting was reportedly in a call with CDC employees. She said some things about needing to fight misinformation. The shooter who attacked CDC headquarters was reportedly motivated by a belief that he had been harmed by the COVID-19 vaccine. And I think from speaking with CDC employees, they felt like Manores, had their back. Maybe they were a little bit underwhelmed by the response to the shooting, but they didn't necessarily feel like Manores was the issue there.
And we're looking at some kind of file images there of Manores. I have to ask you this, though. There was collateral damage to this firing. Some of these high-profile CDC leaders resigned en masse. Just last night, I want to put some of their faces up, and you can maybe describe who these individuals are, how important they are or were to the agency. You see there Dan Jernigan, Deborah Howery, Dimitri Daskalakis. They're out. I mean, they walked out of CDC headquarters today, Margaret, in Atlanta. They were actually clapped out. We'll see some of that video in just a moment here. How much of a loss to the agency is it? Who will replace them, if anyone? Why did they decide to resign?
So these are some of the top leaders at the CDC. The CDC is comprised of 12 centers. So 2 of these people run centers. And then Deborah Howery was the CDC's chief medical officer, which is a really important role involving coordinating all the different centers. And then the other 2 were working on centers that oversee vaccines or emerging diseases, vaccine recommendations. So they were really critical people, I think, when it comes to the CDC's infectious disease response. Who will run those centers remains to be seen.
Okay.
So we'll have to wait and see who.
All right. Margaret, last question for you. I want to go to Capitol Hill briefly. Live picture there, nighttime view in Washington of the Capitol Dome. So U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, he's the chairman of the Senate Health Committee. This was his response yesterday. He said these high-profile departures will require oversight by the Health Committee. Also, some reporting from some of your contemporaries who cover this space, including Dan Diamond at the Washington Post. He has this, that Cassidy is calling for the CDC's vaccine advisors meeting to be postponed. Cassidy is saying if the meeting proceeds, any recommendations made should be rejected as lacking legitimacy given the seriousness of the allegations and the current turmoil in CDC leadership. We're also learning RFK Jr. will be testifying on Capitol Hill next week. I'm sure senators have a lot of questions for him. Is Bill Cassidy being kind of scapegoated in this entire saga? Remember, at the time of RFK's confirmation, he was on the fence. Kennedy, during his hearing, alleviated some of Cassidy's concerns about how Kennedy might take the direction of the agency and so on and so forth here. I guess, does Bill Cassidy have egg on his face after all of this?
Yeah, I don't think things have played out exactly how Senator Cassidy would have hoped. He really agonized over whether or not to vote for Kennedy, and it seems like he only did so after getting some promises from the now secretary, specifically about vaccines. So I think Senator Cassidy is definitely going to have a lot of questions for Kennedy if he's appearing on Capitol Hill next week. That being said, Cassidy does still have a role to play here. If the Trump administration does bring a new CDC director, that person will have to be confirmed, and Senator Cassidy will play a large role in that process.
Have you spoken to the rank and file at the CDC? I mean, how are they feeling right now?
They are feeling very demoralized, I think, with everything that's happened this month. And then obviously there were major personnel and program cuts earlier this year. So yeah, the CDC rank and file that I've spoken with are not feeling optimistic at this moment in time. They're still going to work every day and they're still doing their best, but they're definitely feeling the impact of the changes to the agency.
All right. Margaret Manto there with NOTUS. We appreciate your insight and your reporting. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right. In the meantime, staying, though, with this story, back